Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and you're watching another episode of Sports Minute. Let me welcome you in my usual co-host here, none other than Mr. James Gonzalez. How are you doing tonight, my man?
I'm back. Good to be here.
Love it. And then, of course, our new addition to the Sports Minute team. Welcome in, Mr. Colin McClurg. How are you doing tonight?
Good to see you, gents. Glad to be back and glad to get the maiden voyage underway with the sports coverage. Good to see you all.
Absolutely. And, of course, Crispy's up on our screen tonight. Crispy, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. How's everybody doing this evening?
And Thomas Burnett saying, what's up? Christy saying, hey, guys. We hope you two are having a fantastic night also. Tonight we have some great topics to talk about tonight. Unfortunately, we probably won't let James go off on his little rant tonight about the Angels, even though he desperately wants to. I'm sure Callan could sit here all night and rant about his Padres too, and how bad they have been this season too, and then how Crispy's Rangers are just collapsing.
We're up and down.
But anyways, yeah, bring it down. Go ahead and starting out our first topic tonight. It actually deals with Deion Sanders and a quote that Deion Sanders made. And when I saw this, it's kind of an interesting quote because he said he doesn't like to use the word culture. Instead, he used this quote: "I don't think you got to have unity whatsoever. You got to have good players." And so, James, I'm going to start out with you and tell me, do you agree with this statement that Deion Sanders is saying?
In college terms, I don't agree with it, but the more money and deals are coming into college players, the more it's turning into a pro sport. And that's where you have his quote reigning true. I was kind of afraid of that happening with all these deals going on for players and then NILs. And, Deion, I knew he's a component of that going to Colorado now. And it's unfortunate because you feel like high school is going to turn into this where he's going to say that quote and it's going to ring true and then everybody's going to use it and feel like it. But Deion's different, and it's just weird because I think everybody else uses culture. You hear it all the time in the NFL, in training camps. Like, hey, we're going to build the right culture. We're gonna have a culture that's good, that everybody can win in, and everybody can thrive in. Anybody can talk to anybody and all that. Well, sometimes that doesn't happen, and especially in pro sports. Unity. Like, okay. There's a lot of teams that won that didn't have unity. I think about those late 70 Yankee teams, Shaq and Kobe. They didn't have unity all the time, but they got the job done. And I know Deion, he probably rubbed everybody the wrong way at one point, being on one of his teams. I know Jerry Rice, when Deion was a Niner in 49 or 94. Switch those numbers. I could just imagine the unity not in that locker room. But I think Deion's more worried about himself, worried about getting the most talented players, and he's not shy to ever say anything like that. So if you don't like it, he doesn't care. He's going to say whatever the hell he wants. And I know this is going to rub a lot of the old college football fans the wrong way, and I think everything that he does already, that he did at Jackson State, the way he advocates for the NIL players, the way he's trying to get everybody to go to Colorado, it's going to get worse if you don't like the pro model of sports going into college. It's just going to get worse, and Deion's at the forefront of this, and this quote kind of stimulates it, I think.
And like Thomas is saying too, he's saying that the only way that people are going to follow this is if Colorado actually wins. But Thomas is also saying that he hopes Colorado gets destroyed on Saturday, and Christie's saying that it kind of sounds ridiculous to her also. I guess it kind of feels, I don't know. I was kind of torn between it because I know some teams you have to have that unity. You have to build a good culture. We hear it quite often. But to me, in order to be successful, you have to have a unity as a team. You have to have a good culture. Now, James, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I just know that if I'm running a team, the one thing I want is I want a positive culture. I want to have that unity on a team so everybody's playing as a team. Not this is about me. I'm a good player, so I'm on this team because I'm a good player. No, it needs to be one. It needs to be a unity. It needs to be a team. And sometimes that's where it goes wrong, is to where people say I, me, I.
Dion,
And it yeah, Dion, right? There's
Coach
no I
Fryman.
in team. Yeah, there's absolutely no I in team. So Callan, what do you think of Dion's quote?
I think everybody has their own sentiments and has their own definition of unity. Uh, in sports, it's been defined as chemistry, it's been defined as cohesion, unity, whatever you want to call it. I think everyone in their own way has their own definition of unity. And I don't quite agree, nor do I really quite. I kind of catch the tangent he's making, but I'm not sold on it. As James alluded to, there's been, no pun intended, but there's been prime examples of teams who got the job done, but absolutely hated each other's guts when they were not on the field. James brought up the 70s Yankees. He missed the 70s Athletics, though, too. 3 straight
Oh yeah,
World Series, but those guys absolutely hated being around each other. But when it came time to play, it's almost like a light switch. You turn on the light switch, you turn off the light switch, you play the game, you love each other for 9 innings, and then you go back to wanting to, rip someone's head off basically when the game's over. And then Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers in the early 2000s. So I'm more so, in my time playing sports, that's all that we preached, even at the high school level, even now when I have helped my dad coach travel ball and stuff like that, is there has to be some sort of chemistry. Yeah, you don't have to get along off the field and be everyone's best friend or whatnot. But at the same time, though, there has to be some sort of meshing going on. And this is part of, and this is actually a very great point that has been talked about here in San Diego, kind of talking about the 2023 Padres. And it was actually something I wrote into a couple of guys that I listened to here on the radio in San Diego, John Schaefer and Jim Russell on San Diego Sports 760, was that the Padres have been playing the me game all season. And, it's Juan Soto, it's Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Xander Bogaerts. It's guys only looking at themselves and looking at their numbers, not looking at the whole team. But I believe, though, that this is Dion's way, I think, though, of beginning to make his mark on our new program. I know a lot of people were kind of eager, I guess, to see what he was going to do at Colorado with this first game coming up with TCU. Now, quickly, this is something that I think this is something I touch base on the podcast I will be bringing here next Thursday called Press Row. I read a story on one of my earlier episodes, back in like March or February, about Dion's effect already on the Colorado fan base. And I think Thomas is right, though. The only way that people are going to follow this is if they win games, or if they win games. And it's almost in a way like comparing Colorado Buffaloes football to Padres baseball in 2023, with how fan interest has been rejuvenated in Boulder and has jumped to an all-time high in San Diego. Right now, the Padres are underperforming and they're 10 games below 500. How's that going to affect home games in September when they're already out of the race? I think, though, when it comes to Deion Sanders and his thoughts on the quote again, I don't think you need to have unity whatsoever. You got to have good players. Yeah, but what happens when those good players start only worrying about their stats and their performance, and they don't care about how the team does, yeah, maybe they'll probably, say, yeah, great team win, but it was all about me because I had, 4 touchdowns in the first half of the game, and then I went and sat down and just drank Gatorade the rest of the game. Like, it's only about me, not about we. So I think that it's more of Dion trying to just put his stamp on the Buffalo football program in Boulder. But I do think, though, that James and I probably agree that there has to be some sort of chemistry, cohesion, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think the quote is warranted of me agreeing with it, just because with me being around team sports, though, you got to have it in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before too. How you have a team like the Dodgers who go out and they constantly buy these superstars. The Yankees, they go out and buy these superstars, and then they don't win, and people go, why aren't they winning? And I'm like, well, because sometimes there is a thing that I like to call too much talent on a team, and it's right, yeah, it's too much talent, because you do hear guys say, hey, as long as I get mine, I'm good. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to get mine, and I'm going to be out. As long as I get my money, I'm good. And so I understand what Dion's saying. Yeah, you do have to have good players on a team. I completely understand that, but the unity also has to be there. It does. If you don't have unity, I feel like you're not going to make it far. So, Crispy, do you agree with everything that Callan and James and myself are saying?
I don't. I agree. You need talent. That should be one thing. Not the top thing, but it should be a thing. You may not like the person or your teammates, but you have to come together as a team. That's why it's team sports. To win a championship, to win a game, to whatever your goal is. You have to find some kind of camaraderie.
All right, so Messeron, I'm sure you kind of heard what the topic was about. It was what Deion Sanders said by saying that you don't have to have unity on a team. You only have to have good players.
I don't know. They're just, I guess it can go both ways. I've seen teams that heard they didn't get along at all and they still won the championship. I mean, it only takes you so far. You can be close as brothers and not win.
No, I get it, but I think with this debate, it could go round and round and round and round and round. But
Absolutely.
But exactly what Thomas was saying, in the end, I agree with that, is that people will listen if Colorado wins. If they don't win, then people are going to be like, what Dion said is wrong, and he needs to build a unity, and he needs to get a culture.
You don't have to get along off the field or off the court, just as long as you get along on the court while you're playing.
Yep, 70s A's, 70s Yankees, Kobe and Shaq led Lakers. Kind of feel like, Dave, I don't know if you agree with me, maybe the 85 Bears, because Ditka and Buddy Ryan absolutely hated each other's guts.
Right? Perfect example right there.
Big B, what's your thoughts on the Deion Sanders quote?
I don't know. I mean, there needs to be chemistry. There needs to be unity. What was the exact quote? I missed it all. What was the exact quote?
The exact quote was, I don't think you got to have unity whatsoever. You got to have good players, open and close quote.
Oh, man. That's tough because, maybe in a game of basketball, you can have, 5, 6 guys carry to a championship that don't like each other. In football, I mean, the offensive line has to block for the quarterback, has to block for the running back. So I think it needs to be unity and chemistry. I definitely. I mean, there's going to be occasions, yeah, you probably have better talent than the other team, but I think chemistry and cohesiveness will win 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, so speaking of unity and culture, maybe not, maybe 10, not now. I back now for me.
A little bit.
Yeah. I think he froze.
Yeah, I think it's freezing.
Come on, Elsa, snap out of it.
Cal, you got the agenda in front of you?
Yeah, I think Adam is stuck with some. Yep, and there he goes. Some
Yeah.
technical problems. The next thing that he wanted to bring up after the talk with Deion Sanders, guys, is over in Major League Baseball, probably the best, I'd say, storyline, maybe most fun team to watch right now is the Baltimore Orioles, who have somehow some way turned a huge corner after this last season. James, I'll start this one off with you here, my man. Do you believe that the Baltimore Orioles have what it takes to at least make the World Series in 2023?
Well, since the team behind me want to be idiots, I've been wanting to watch more Oriole games or listen to them at least while I'm at work, and I've been doing that as of late. Now, they did lose their closer for a 15-day IL stint, Felix Bautista. It seems like he was never the same ever since they gave up that grand slam to Kyle Tucker a couple of weeks ago against Houston. But, they still have a really good bullpen. They got Jack Flaherty and Shintaro Fujinami for the bullpen, Flaherty for the starters. Kyle Gibson is still there. But I just believe they're too young, like not yet. They're already early to the party, so it is great to see that the Orioles do this, being in first place in the East, in the really tough East, albeit it's only by a game and a half, but to even be there is amazing considering what this team was, in 2021, just down, way down, literally worst to first here we're talking about. So it's very fun to see. And they just got Cedric Mullins back, too. So that really helps out. But Santander is one of my favorite players, as well as Kyle Tucker. Had both of them as all-stars, but Santander didn't get in, but Hayes did. But those two are really underrated. Like, their whole outfield is really underrated, honestly. But it all starts with Rochman, and then Gunnar Henderson coming up, among others. Jorge Mateo at the bottom of the lineup, Ryan Mountcastle with the power. They're what every team wishes to be when you think about when you really start over, and they have more coming. Matt Holliday's son, Jackson Holliday, is in the minors. There was even talk that he might come up this year all of a sudden in September, but I would think if they have injuries, then maybe that could happen, but I don't know. But as long as they keep doing what they're doing, they have a shot, but their pitching would have to go way over the mark and be really great, and their hitting would have to stay where they are. And what I want to see in the playoffs when they get there is a capacity crowd back at Camden Yards. I think that'd be awesome. Maybe some home field advantage would help there. Hosting a series would be awesome. I'm still, though, looking at Houston unless they self-destruct. Their pitching might be an issue there. The offense is fine, but they've had some bad injuries this year. So maybe Baltimore can take advantage of that if another injury happens. But for me, I still think of Houston as the American League favorite. I was going to say Texas, but their bullpen has let them down as of late. And then they are having a problem like the Padres where they can't hit in runners in scoring position. So that's a problem too. Since, I don't know if Tampa Bay, I think they've lost too much, but Seattle's such on a hot streak. Minnesota, I don't really trust them in the playoffs, but you never know if they can get over the hump of Houston, then they got it. But I'm still going to go with Houston.
Brandon, I would agree with James about.
Good.
Adam, you good?
Yeah, I'm good now. I'm good. But go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to hand it over to Brandon real quick about the Orioles this season, and I actually think that Manny Machado, when the Orioles came here to play the Padres earlier this month, actually applauded his former ball club about how quickly that their rebuild has turned a giant 180 from, like James alluded to, the team losing, over 100 games in 2021 to all of a sudden 2 years later being on top of the American League East division. Like James said, that division has been a juggernaut this entire season up until the Yankees imploded, and they've gone really down south recently. But Brandon, what would you say here? Are the Orioles in your mind maybe a potential favorite for the World Series?
God, I hope so. I mean, last year towards the end, we were all rooting for the Orioles to get into the playoffs. I think they fell a game or two short. I think if it was another week, they would have made it. So, yeah, they might be ahead of schedule, but let's go with the Orioles. My Twins, yeah, they're going to be in it, but they'll be the first team knocked out because they didn't do nothing at the trade deadline. Houston or Seattle over there in the West is going to be a tough team. But I really hope the Orioles do it. They haven't had a winning ball club, mid-'80s, early '80s, I think, is the last time they sniffed around the World Series. I could be wrong. But again, we all have to remember Chris's pick to win or go to the World Series was Kansas City and Washington, and we know how good those guys are doing. So,
One of them has been eliminated.
Chris. I know, Chris. You kind of jinxed that a little bit, Chris. That's right though. I think my biggest concern. I think my biggest concern is Big B. I'm completely with you. I would love nothing more than Baltimore to make it. I really do, because this is such a young team. But that's my biggest worry, is that it's a young team, and so when it comes to postseason, are they going to be able to shine in the spotlight, or is the spotlight going to be too much? Because when you're young and you've never been there, I mean, the butterflies start going, especially when you hit the postseason and the lights are shining. So I'm going to turn this over to Callan quick. So Callan, what's your thoughts on the Orioles? Do you believe they can make it?
I'm with Thomas and with James. I feel like the Orioles are like a year ahead of the curve. And I only say the reason why that I'm not fully embracing Baltimore is because of what Adam alluded to. I worry about postseason experience. And with the American League right now, Mariners or Rangers. Rangers have, been on top of that division for a while till they sputtered here over the past couple of weeks. Mariners, 21 wins in May. I think it's a new franchise record for wins in a single month in club history, building off of their playoff run for the first time since 2001 last season. AL Central, hate to say it, worst division in baseball right now, because at one point in time, the division leader was below 500.
Yep.
No one seems to want that division championship. And again, the Orioles are just playing in a very, very loaded division right now. Them and Tampa Bay, the Blue Jays are hanging around. Boston's making a push. Yankees were making a push until they sputtered out of control as well. So even though it's like the best, like maybe not best surprise, but like best storyline right now, I'm not fully ready to put all the eggs in the basket with Baltimore this season. I would probably even say maybe wait till next year, once these guys get this experience like under their belt. Because I almost want to compare this 2023 Baltimore Orioles team to that 2015, maybe James, 2015 Orioles club that made the postseason with Adam Jones, Quentin Berry, Delman Young, who had that big double against Detroit, and like you were alluding to, James, about that sellout crowd, like every time I sort of run chanting to Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. Like that's what I want to see, is like seeing Baltimore, I think a very great sports town, a great baseball town, be able to celebrate the Orioles having some success here. And also, it's such a fun team to watch, though. Like James said about Santander and Adley Rushman, Austin Hayes, a lot of guys that you don't know about, but you want to tune in and watch them play because what they've done to, I think, kind of invigorate your interest if you're a baseball fan. So I agree with Thomas, though. I think the hurdle right now is still Houston.
Mhm.
Even though they're not right now leading the AL West because, the Mariners could eventually bomb out or bomb pretty soon. The Rangers could bomb further and the Astros get hot at the right time. But I agree, though, with James, is that playoff experience, I think, is my only concern right now with really saying I'm going all in with Baltimore for the World Series this year.
All right. Mess around. I know we've had this conversation before, and we were very, very high on the Orioles outfield. Like, their outfield is completely solid. But anyways, mess around. Your thoughts. Do you believe in the Baltimore Orioles?
Yeah, as long as their pitching can keep the ball in the yard, that outfield gets it everything and anything. So
You got Washington, right?
like, they got a chance.
I'm in Texas.
I just don't
My way to his house.
see it this year, though. I'm with everybody else.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
Crispy.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a good story for Baltimore to win a World Series, make the playoffs. If the Rangers didn't do it, which at the moment it doesn't seem like it, but I think they could do it. They're young, they're inexperienced, but sometimes that can be good. It can also hold you back. So it just depends on how this team plays.
So Christy's saying that her Red Sox got beat tonight, and they're in fourth place in the AL East. And Thomas is saying that it's time for a managerial change in Beantown. Maybe
Minnesota could be using one too this year. So
Probably San Diego as well.
yeah, San Diego, man, Colin. That's just heartbreaking.
San Diego
to see.
just got a new one. But you guys just got a new manager. I don't think it's time to change yet.
Nah, I think they're gonna blow that team up though.
Yeah, I mean,
How's that kid doing in Double-A or whatever? That catcher.
I really am not sure how Ethan Salas is doing right now I think he's in Fort Wayne, so that's high A right now. He may be Double-A, I forget though. But if James isn't going to rant about his ball club, then maybe I'll rant about my ball club for a bit here before we get back on track. But this has been a very not surprising year in San Diego. It's almost it's something I brought up a while back. Everybody, San Diego sports fans are kind of, sadly in the same cycle as Dallas Cowboy fans. You get all these high-priced free agents to come to town. You have off-season expectations. Something goes wrong if a team plays bad, and the cycle just repeats over and over and over and over again. And sadly, I mean, I really hate, having to, throw my hometown or at least throw my ball club underneath the bus, but disappointing does not begin to, I guess, say what this year has been like other than disappointing, other than the fact it's been disappointing and extremely frustrating watching how this team has played throughout the course of the 2023 season. And sadly, I think a lot of it, though, now I know a lot of people here locally want to blame AJ Preller and Bob Melvin. It's like I think Ace said earlier in the first topic or segment about Deion Sanders' quote about, unity. And Ace said that, teams may have too much talent. And maybe that is the Padres case, as Brandon said, maybe that the, red button is hit and the whole team is blown into a million pieces. But as much as people here want to keep on blaming Bob Melvin and blaming AJ Preller and blaming Peter Seidler, at what point in time do you stop blaming the manager and the GM? And when do you start putting your onus on blaming the roster, let alone your core four, who I think all four are in some sort of career worst numbers right now? It was like I wrote to John Schaefer and Jim Russell last night on their YouTube Padre wrap-up show. It is beyond infuriating, fellas. And I've been around sports media or around sports for my entire life like you guys have. And then obviously, watching games as a broadcaster for, 15 going on 16 years. It is beyond infuriating watching Juan Soto hit. This is a guy who literally thinks he's going to walk every time. but thinks more than anything else that him staring at the pitcher and watching strike one, strike two, strike three is warranted of him, like, getting a huge contract over the offseason. So at some point in time, you have to begin to blame the roster.
Mhm.
And I definitely blame a lot of this on what happened over the offseason, not for them signing Xander Bogaerts, but I'm more ticked about how this group of individuals, Bogaerts, Soto, Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., how I would even have to throw my old teammate Joe Musgrove into that boat. Those five guys, sadly, ran their gums a lot over the offseason and have not once backed up their play on the field this season. It began with, Manny Machado back in April flapping his gums at the media saying, don't jump off the bandwagon now because once we start effing raking, you're going to wish that he weren't already off the bandwagon in April. And then Juan Soto stupidly, utterly dismisses the Los Angeles Dodgers based off of one meaningless playoff series victory last season in the NLDS because of a rally goose flying on the field and somehow turning the fortunes for the Padres last season. And Soto just totally lambasted the Dodgers as not a threat because of what they had on the talent. Xander Bogaerts saying, I don't want to hit second. I want to hit fifth or move me up in the order. Soto saying, I can't hit second. Move me down in the order. And then, in a lot of ways, though, and then even Joe Musgrove said a lot of interesting, weird, it's a lot like what I've been hearing locally on radio here on KGB AM 760. You could probably put together a whole entire, book of just what is coming out of the Padre clubhouse in quotes this year. There's been so many off-the-wall, loony, utterly pathetic and stupid quotes coming out of that clubhouse. It was really bad earlier in the year when Nelson Cruz was still in San Diego before he got DFA'd. I think it was Kevin Acee, the Padre beat writer for the local paper, asked him what he thought was wrong with the Padres. He literally asked Jake Cronenworth across the way of the locker room what he thought was wrong with the Padres. And when Jake said he didn't know, he asked somebody else. Like, nobody wants to take the accountability in this Padre locker room. And there's been several times this season, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 times, there have been closed door players only meetings, and not once has anything good come out of those meetings. And it's even been to the point where even last season, this also came out earlier today, there were a lot of meetings too, even during their run to the CS last year, where there were meetings that players told the media, please don't report on what was said because this is extremely high priority, highly confidential stuff that we were talking about at this rate. And then they want to, but more than anything else, nobody takes the blame on their play. It's about, Darvish got hurt. Joe got hurt. Our bench is not any good. They DFA'd all the guys that were doing great in early April, like Dahl and Odor, but they kept Matt Carpenter on the roster because of his contract. So until these players actually fess up and actually, for once, take the accountability of themselves for how they were all bark, no bite over the course of the offseason with them. I know what fan fish are supposed to hype up the crowd for the course of the season and whatnot, and that the Padres have been, smashing records when it's come to season ticket sales, and that there's been a wait list for the first time in club history in 50 plus years of this ball club existing. And with so much money invested by the fan base that they have signed Bogaerts, they have, locked up Machado for a new 11-year deal. There's a lot of long, lean years here with these contracts coming up that you really can't, I don't think, do a whole lot, honestly, to fortify your roster. And that this is not on Melvin. This may or may not be on Preller. But I would rather see a group of individuals who have played, beyond pathetic baseball for 5.5 months, going on 6 months, actually have the manpower to actually step in front of a microphone and say, stop blaming Bob, stop blaming AJ. We're going to blame ourselves for this season. And damn well, it's not going to happen. But there has to be somebody in that locker room who has some sort of common sense to realize that Bob Melvin can't go out there and hit for me in extra innings when we're 0-11. AJ Preller can't come down and, strike out 3 hitters in a row with a runner on second base in the 10th inning when you're 0-11 in extra innings and you're 6-24 in one-run games. So to say it's been a disappointment is just barely the tip of the iceberg. It's been infuriating, frustrating, and just hard to watch. How this team can build leads in somehow, some way to say, nope, we don't want to win. Take it from us next 2 innings. We don't win our next 2 innings. And things like that. So I would be more surprised if Peter Seidler steps in and not only cans Bob Melvin, but if the Padres actually clean house in the front office. That's more of a thing that's been talked about here more often. It's not been about Bomel or been about Preller. It's more about what is the owner going to do because of all the money committed to Tatis, to Machado, to Bogarts, maybe Soto if he's extended. There's been a lot of other, spattering of chitter chatter, but Soto has been basically ruining the clubhouse culture, and that's been a thing like we talked about with Deion Sanders is that there is no cohesion. It reminds me a little bit of the 98 Padres, who the year prior in 97 they lost like 90 plus games if they won the division title the year prior. And one of the players of the Padres in the spring training of that season, it wasn't Tony Gwynn, but what they said they had to do to go where they wanted to go was you don't have to be superhuman. Just go out there and play consistent, hard-nosed baseball, and we're going to be very successful. They were in the World Series that year in 98. Every player basically on this club has tried to be superhuman. And that's not how you win games. That's not what you're supposed to do. And I think the season hinges on a little bit on opening weekend against Colorado. I know it's in like March or April, but it kind of began to be like a telltale sign that when they would not convert with guys on base that, oh boy, this might be doomed to fail. And here was already, it was only April. And I think the last time, guys, that the Padres were over 500, they were 18-15 all the way back in May. That is how bad of a year it's been. And it's only getting worse. And Brandon, I think you might be onto something here, man, that the Padres might have to just blow this team up because I don't know what else you can do with all that money committed to Machado, to Tatis, to even Yu Darvish. And there's been reports now, guys, he may have to go under Tommy John again. And he just got a 6-year extension over the offseason. And so definitely, you could blame a bit on Preller for maybe overstepping, the credit card limits with his contract offers. But I would rather see a team who has been floundering all season, who hype themselves up and all of the, not necessarily the hype around the club, but more of the internal hype that was, done by these players talking to the assembled fan base in San Diego about, we don't care about the Dodgers, and things like that. I would rather these guys take accountability for how they have acted, both playing the game, but also some of their antics away from the field, though, again, like Soto dismissing the Dodgers before the first series of the year. A lot of the quotes in the media have just been very, very mind-boggling of like, this is actually coming out of a major league professional sports team's locker room. Not good here in San Diego. And it's really sad to see that, probably the most anticipated Padres season, probably since 1998, so over 25 years, has just been dismal, sad, depressing, infuriating, frustrating, confusing, and just really, really agitating, just watching how this team has played, how there's no cohesion, they play for themselves. They're very hit or miss when it comes to actually, putting their money where their mouth is, pun intended. So, maybe wait till next year, but it could be a very long, dark, and cold offseason here in San Diego for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of that, though, that kind of transitions us into our next topic, because our next topic we talk about Jonathan Taylor. And we kind of know what's kind of going on with that situation with Jonathan Taylor, which to me, I get that he wants the money. And right now in the sports world today, a lot has happened now to where it's no longer I'm out there for the fun of the game. It's hey, how much money can I get? I want the bank. I want the bank. I want the bank. No, you offered me this. You're offering me 10 million. I don't want 10. I want 11. If you don't give me 11, I'm not signing. I'm going to sit out because I want my 11 million. I want my 11 million. Look, I understand the frustration with Jonathan Taylor. I get it. But it doesn't only hurt him, it hurts the whole team. It hurts everybody. So, James, starting out with you on this one, what's your thoughts on the Jonathan Taylor situation? Where does he go? Does he indeed get traded, or are the Colts going to stand their ground and be like, no, we're not going to trade you?
Well, Taylor and the Colts are pretty much at a standstill right now because of the trade that didn't happen with him. They didn't get a fair offer, they felt like, for Taylor. I know the Packers and the Dolphins were involved. I don't know why the Packers. I mean, they already have two great running backs. Or not great, but imagine Taylor with the Packers along with Jones and Dillon. That'd be amazing. Anyway, yeah, I just don't see anything happening because now he's on the PUP list. So nothing can happen. I know the Colts won it. I know it's been, Irsay versus Taylor, basically. And the Colts won it, first round picks. They wanted a good haul back for him, but I think they were smart. Teams were smart enough not to do that because he's not worth that right now. He's a running back coming off of 2 bad years, honestly. He had a great year in 21, but then after that, he hasn't been so good or good enough to get that haul back. So it's not surprising that any team didn't budge at that, knowing that, you have to pay that guy going forward. And running backs, you don't pay usually up front like this. I know with Jacobs with the Raiders. It's all these 1-year deals now with Jacobs, and it's been I know for sure he's not coming back after this season. But coming with the Colts now and Taylor, again, he's on that physically unable to perform list. He'll miss the first 4 weeks. He's got that lingering ankle injury that he suffered last year. It's odd, too, now. It's really awkward because he's going to be at the practices. He's going to be at the games, but he's not going to be playing. He's just going to be walking around basically in a hoodie and doing nothing. So I don't know if he's going to rehab with the team or independently. I don't know if he's going to honestly be around, but if he is, I don't know how he's not going to be a distraction to the team now. So, I mean, maybe they have to wait till the deadline, which is Halloween night, I believe, to get a deal done for him. But maybe the Colts will have to just take what they can get for him, honestly, which would be – I know I heard something and they wanted something equivalent to a first-round pick. And they were saying, let me get a second, a third, and a fourth if you won't give me a first-round pick. And I was trying to do math. I'm like, wait. Okay, sure. So the Colts were asking for too much for a damaged good. Let's just be honest. But the Colts hold all the leverage. They control his rights for the next 3 years. It's a situation that is just very awkward right now. And this always happens in the NFL or NBA, where it's just, you mentioned, Ace, where a player wants too much money. And if he doesn't get his way, if he doesn't get his contract, he'll want out. It'll be like the James Harden situation coming up this year, where he'll be around, but he won't be happy, like he was in Houston. And I can see the same thing happening with Taylor and the Colts here, where he's around, he's not playing, and he's not happy. And I don't know if the situation gets healed. I don't think it does. But I think the Colts just have to swallow their pride and get whatever they can for him when those 4 weeks are up during the first part of the season.
Yeah, but what makes it so hard is you look at the Colts and currently, because Jonathan Taylor wants out, it's still a distraction with the team because he's currently still there. So he's going to be a distraction. Now, on the other hand, if the Colts go, nope, we're going to refuse to trade you, keep him. Then you have a guy who's not happy, and you're wondering, okay, if we put him on the field, is he going to be putting 100% effort into the game? So there's always that catch-22 when it comes to it on who has and who doesn't. That's where it's so hard. That's where it's hard. But Big B, what's your thoughts on the Jonathan Taylor situation?
Well, we all know that the running backs had some kind of meeting, Zoom call before preseason started about their pay and what they want. The game's changed. It's not a running game league. It's passing. Passing's the sexy thing right now. So, you still want a good running back, which Taylor can be, stays healthy, but I don't know what the Colts are going to do. I think the Colts are just going to stand pat right now, possibly revisit it, like James said, at the trade deadline, see if the team needs a running back. But if they keep them, I mean, winning cures all. So maybe if they're winning, Taylor switches his tune, and the team switches their tune. But right now, I mean, I think they should have just went out and got what they could instead of putting him on the pup list, because, like you guys said, he's going to be a distraction unless they're winning and he changes. So, but the NFL changed it to more of a pass league right now, so you don't need that stud Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders type running back. You can get by with 2-3 decent running backs as long as you got a good weapons that can catch the ball and spread the field. So the running back has gone from being the dominant to second, third fiddle to in a lot of these teams, because they got the weapons. I mean, right now, if you look at fantasy football, I bet you in the top 30, half of them are running backs, or receivers. You probably got 10 to 12 quarterbacks up there, then you probably got running backs. So, that's just the way the game is right now.
A variety of classics from the past, often.
Sorry, I was muted. I muted my. But okay, since you're right there too, what's your thoughts on the Jonathan Taylor situation?
Well, the problem is, it's like Brandon said, it's passively.
With a new spin. 44 even had a brand new puzzle. Manta Ray in episode
I can't hear you.
Always gets overlooked in these discussions. There have been
Dave, you're being overdrowned by whatever you're listening to.
Weeks ago,
all right, Crispy, your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor's a good player. He just wants more money, but I don't think what he's doing is smart. There's a lot of interest when he wanted to get traded, but no one seemed to have the right fit, and he wasn't traded to anybody. So, I mean, when he does come back in 4 weeks, I think maybe they'll renegotiate. Hopefully, I don't know, but it's a crazy situation.
All right, so Callan, I know you don't really watch a lot of football. I get it, but I don't know if you know what's going on with the Jonathan Taylor situation, or if you have thoughts on it or whatever. But if you do, go ahead and take it away.
No, I agree with James more than anything else, though, fellas, is it just seems like it's either the NFL or the NBA that always is dealing with guys that want to hold out for more money. And it's definitely, came to fruition with Josh Jacobs, I believe. He just barely recently was able to, re-sign himself, or he re-signed a contract with the Vegas Raiders a couple of days ago for, 1 year, like $11 million, whatever it was. But at the same time, though, is, it's a very perplexing situation, because it almost reminds me a little bit of like Eli Manning holding out to not play for the Chargers in 2004 when he got drafted, and he's like, I don't want to play in San Diego, and then he somehow worked that trade out with the Giants to go and get Phillip Rivers, and obviously Eli Manning goes to the Giants and does what he does.
The difficulty
But,
in a standard slide
yeah,
puzzle.
I don't quite understand what's going on. I mean, I get the fact, though, but I think, though, that Tim Hennickson was actually spot on, though. I mean, if I'm the Colts, why would I want to give more money to a guy who's beat up, banged up, shit and spit out, though? He's got a bad back, and he's had a bad leg as well at the same time. So, I don't know. This will be very, very interesting to see what does come out of this, that's for sure.
Favorite. So I'm sure we'll see it again in the coming seasons. This puzzle is a cruel joke. So simple.
From you, buddy.
Well,
There you
I'm
go.
back. Okay, so
One pieces, one solution, infinite headaches.
there you go.
trying to-
I'm good now. All right. So in our last topic tonight, we were talking about the Pac-12 and how much college football has absolutely changed. We've seen all these massive changes over this season to where you have teams just shifting from the Pac-12 going to the ACC, the SEC, everything. And now we know that the Pac-12 is going to be potentially dissolved probably in 2024. Like they're actually talking about that, going, is Pac-12 going to be there? Or is it going to be dissolved? So I'm looking at this going, I think it's going to go away. So if it goes away, how do they calculate the playoffs? They're going a 12-team playoff. What's the best way to do this? So, James, what do you think is the best way?
Yeah, my brain is fried. I with all this movement, Callan, you remember, I think it was in 2020, 2021, whenever you guys had the show going on, whatever show, and I was commenting on it, saying it's like musical chairs, and the music never stops with all these universities and all the conference changes. Why does everything I love or like or grew up with, it all changes? And, growing up as a SC fan, I always knew, okay, Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever it's going to be, I can always look forward to the rivalries. I can always look forward to the spirited games. I hate UCLA. I hate Oregon. Everybody else is all right, but and I know that some universities are going with UCLA and USC to the Big Ten, which has to be the Big 20 eventually. I think that was what Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, they're all going to be gone. And then Arizona State, they're going to be gone somewhere else. And basically all you're left with is what? California and Stanford.
If they don't leave for the ACC.
It's just, ugh. Like, I've had a headache from work today and just thinking about, like, where everybody's going to end up. Basically, it's going to be, 3 big conferences, and that's it. So let's say there's 20 schools in each of those 3 conferences, right? Okay, how do you get that to the playoffs, right? Do you do it like, baseball, where you have just, 12? I don't even know how you do this. How many teams do you take from each conference? Do you do it where it's like you take the first 4 from each conference?
Top 4. There's your 12-team field right there.
Yeah, that's all I could think of how they're going to do it, Ace. I'm trying to wrap my head around it and just thinking, hey, just have 3 big conferences and 12 playoff teams, and each play, 1 game each, and go on and keep winning. But it's already a disaster in my head just thinking about it all. I know they want more, and it's all about money and all that, but it's ruining what I grew up with, and that's what I hate about it all. So that's all I can come up with. It's going to be a 12-team playoff, and then in 3 conferences, and that's it. That's all I can think of, Ace.
All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of where I was thinking too. You got to take 3 big conferences, put them together, and just basically say, hey, the top 4 teams from each conference, because you can't really think of anything else. The way that they were talking about doing it was blasphemy. And I'm like, how are they going to even do that? They had like 3 options on the table. And when I was reading all 3 options, my head was starting to hurt. It really, really was, because I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. The options made zero sense. It sounds like they want to make it more complicated than it has to be. Make 3 big conferences, do the top 4 in each conference, and that's who makes the playoffs. So Big B, how would you set up the playoffs?
Well, I've said it probably for the last couple of years. I think we're heading that direction. I think within the next few years, you're going to have 4 big conferences. Let's just say North, South, East, and West, and you're going to have about 20 some teams in each one. You're going to have, I think, then each conference will have their own, minor conferences, kind of like baseball or the NFL, where you got, the AFC South and all that, and then they'll probably. You got to get rid of these week 0 games where these big schools play nobody, because they mean nothing. So I think you're going to go, probably like a 10 to 12 regular season games, inter playoff games, and then whoever wins that playoff, then you're going to, get it down to 3 teams from each conference to go into the mega playoffs, whatever. But it's going to be complicated. We're all going to hate it at first. Then once it gets played out, if we like it, then we'll like it. And if not, then, as long as they're making money in the bowl games, I think it's going to be that way. But yeah, I'd say within the next probably 5 to 10 years, you're going to see just 4 big conferences, super conferences.
All right, Crispy, what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, right now as it stands, you could have the 12 teams going to be next year, 2024, 2025. So yeah, they have time to think about it, but I think they should go your top 10 your top 10 conference winners move on, and then somehow, I don't know how they would determine this, but you would have 2 wild cards. That's probably the easiest way, but we all know college football is not easy to predict. So.
All right, Metzron, what's your thoughts on the playoffs for college football?
This just kept the way it was. They make it too confusing, too complicated for everybody to even follow along and understand it. Well, at least me anyway. I never really paid much attention to college football till like the playoffs anyway. So I don't know. It's a mess.
All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up with Callan. Your thoughts on the college football playoffs?
Please make it stop, is all I ask. And, I have been the lone man on the island across multiple podcast networks, even through a multiple year hiatus, who has long said that I don't see college realignment working out for anybody. And I have proof of that from the Missouri head football coach, who said, yeah, this is great for my football program, but did anybody out there consider our baseball team, our basketball teams, our soccer teams, our non-revenue generating sports, who will have to make not one road trip out of our hometown, but multiple days on the road, going long mileage away from where we're playing our games? And I cited this in a text rant I had to a former podcast host of ours when I said, think about those sports for a second. Take everyone's love for football out of the way and put it in the trash. Think about what is going on, though, with the rise of college student athletes who have committed suicide. I applaud a great player from USD softball, McKenna Bregelman, who actually redshirted this past year to help further advocate for better mental health services for student athletes because of the toll that this takes on them. Yes, call them soft if you want to, folks, but it's about that long grind, though, and especially nowadays when you're going to be looking at like James and USC playing games in Omaha, Nebraska, and in, Madison, Wisconsin in the middle of December. but also not just that, but the sports like baseball, the sports like soccer that have to make, multiple road trips in a matter of a week, not just, a one-off for one game, but they're playing Friday, Sunday, or Thursday, Saturday, and they're not that close to home. Yes, USD soccer played, on the road, but they only went to Seattle to play Washington and Seattle U. Oh, they're back home tomorrow to play New Mexico and CSUN over the weekend. So this is more about, in my opinion, this is more about the fact that you didn't factor in everybody in your decision. You only saw the football money, and that is what you're running after. And that is what is going to, I think, burn college realignment, because it makes no sense to me that you can move all of your athletic programs. Like I said, if it was your football program only moving out of your conference, I'd have absolutely no problem with it. But the fact now that you're factoring in your volleyball program, your soccer programs, baseball, softball, basketball, cross country, rowing, lacrosse, field hockey, boxing, whatever other collegiate sports are out there, that you didn't factor them in your decision is what more so infuriates me. And it's also the fact that it's been not really blown out of proportion, but now it's almost like you have to start wondering, like Brandon said, about like conferences like the WAC, the West Coast Conference, the Big Sky, who don't really rely on football for the revenue. Yes, my university plays football, but we're FCS 1AA, starting up shop on Friday at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. But I hypothetically threw it out there. What if the WCC and the WAC merge? Yeah, you're going as far east as Texas, but you're still keeping everything somewhat centralized. Yeah, you're crossing over a time zone or two, as opposed to just playing in California and Oregon and Washington State when it comes to the WCC. Then you factor in, San Diego State was like right there. I heard a report a couple days ago that San Diego State was like on the goal line of getting into the Pac-12, but literally the next day is when the Pac-12 further imploded with, the next four schools leaving the Pac-12, Pac-4, Pac-5, whatever it is. And then now factoring in that Stanford and Cal and SMU are apparently also on the goal line of going to the ACC, and their closest opponents are going to be in South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina. Yeah, we're not going to factor in all of our kids in our decision. We only care about, the baby of the program. We only care about the football program. That's what more so over the course of this whole entire saga that has been college realignment, this ongoing carousel, has more so infuriated me, because thinking back to when I would have been in college, if I would have taken my scholarship to play at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, I would have like, okay, Creighton, Big East, Xavier, UConn, Marquette, okay, Wisconsin, Connecticut, places that are a little far, but not too far away from campus. And now I would have thought, like, what if Creighton would have like upping left and gone to, a West Coast, like a Western Conference, like out in California somewhere, or Nevada. So, I think more of it from like what could have been for me, but also I think about though those athletes who kind of in a way are getting screwed. Yeah, you're going to be able to play and travel the world basically, but multiple times a year though. I know it's part of the game when it comes to if you make it to the pros though and stuff like that. But man, I don't know how this is going to work for the college football playoff sake. Said it before and I'll say it again. There is never going to be a perfect, squeaky clean, wash the hands, sanitize the hands. There is never going to be a perfect college football playoff format that will satisfy James, Brandon, Ace, Dave, Chris, former podcast host of ours. It's not going to satisfy everyone's needs. And I think that Brandon's right, though, that eventually maybe that all of the conferences eventually just get absorbed into the like the Western League or the Central League or whatever you want to call it. And then they're all just like divisions, basically. You have like the West Coast Conference division or whatever they're going to call it. So the realignment stuff is infuriating more so for me, because I think about all the other student athletes out there who are not, A-list celebrities playing on the football program, but, they play soccer, they play baseball, they play basketball, they play field hockey. They play all of the, non-revenue generating sports that people don't find interesting. Those are the athletes that are going to suffer more. And I think that Missouri's head football coach was just so spot on, though. I would love to just share that or pin that to any discussion about realignment. Like, yeah, this is great. No, read the whole entire thing. Yeah, this is great if you're a football fan, but what if you're not a football fan like Square Six is, where you work in college soccer, you work in college volleyball, you work in college hoops and college baseball and
Mhm.
college softball. Yeah, it's great for football, but it's probably killing kids' morale, though, if they're in soccer or another sports where they have to make those multiple trips, over the course of a week. Baseball could be playing, a week in, a weekend series somewhere back east and then have to stay on the East Coast. And you know what that is? That's more class time missed. That's more in-person class time missed. And I know we've been accustomed to like Zoom and, virtual learning and stuff like that throughout the course of the pandemic. But, at the same time, though, I'm very hesitant, and I'm still the man on the island who's not going to fully embrace this carousel of college realignment. I'm just not going to. Yeah, maybe I'm the meme of the guy at the table saying college football's not, college realignment's not going to work. Change my mind. Somebody out there changed my mind. The fact, though, about other players suffering, college soccer, college volleyball. Like I said, forget football for like 2 seconds. Factor in all, the players and staff members, playing a sport that is not, your cup of tea because it's not college football. Again, I think Mizzou's head football coach was so spot on. Like I said, I would just love to just shove that quote into people's faces that want to tell me that, college realignment is great. Notably, one notable former podcast host of ours. I would just love to just keep, unrolling it like it's a medieval times script. Like, read the full print, read it to the last detail, and especially, like I said, though, as well, knowing about the last couple years, though, of a lot of college athletes dying young, whether by, sadly, self-harm, suicide. Katie Mayer, notably, who was the very, I think, hotshot goalkeeper at Stanford University, who passed away from, her personal problems over the course of the offseason, after she was already done, I think. And I think there was a college hockey player from BC, I think, or one of the big programs. She died at the age of 20. So I'm more worried about what the toll will be, though, on the mental well-being of all student athletes who are not football players, because you are away from home for so long. Yes, folks, I fully get that it's about, well, if they go pro, they're going to have to get used to it anyway. I'm aware of that, though, but still, though, kind of like this young of an age, though, they're coming into adulthood, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids coming into their, into their so-called prime, their prime, basically, or whatnot. I get it's about the money. I get it's about the revenue. I get it's about the TV contracts, like the Big Ten's, like, I think over $1 billion or like multiple $1 billion now. And they're basically taking a monopoly over all the big networks now. And I read a story from Awful announcing yesterday that they're going to be basically doing, Big Ten after dark now. Like, forget Pac-12 after dark now. It's Big Ten after dark now because of SC and UCLA. And then factoring in, Stanford and Cal maybe going to the ACC. We're opening up a lot of different cans of worms here that I just don't feel comfortable about this whole thing going on. And again, maybe it's, me being, the 29-year-old going on 79-year-old man, barking at the clouds or, barking at the kids, get off my lawn. I truly just don't see the benefits of what has gone on since OU and Texas dropped that major bombshell that they were going to leave for the SEC. Like, that, to me, just, I think James is right, though. I think it's ruined college athletics. I think it's ruined it more than NILs. It's ruined it more than, any other thing we can think of in college athletics. And I hate to say that, but that is just kind of been where my thoughts have been about the whole entire offseason. And, OU Texas leaving, and then Pac-12, like the almighty Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 may no longer exist after the 23-24 school year. And I really hope, though, that conferences like the WCC and the WAC, maybe the Big Sky, or like other small conferences like ours, are not truly affected by this. I know they probably will be. But again, can you really factor in non-football programs or FCS programs into this whole thing with realignment? I don't know. And it was actually pretty funny, real quick, before I wrap up my thoughts here. My first game of the year, we actually played Stanford in women's soccer. And I actually ran my hypothetical merger of the WCC and the WAC across one of my bosses. And he actually thought it was actually, though it was maybe like, ludicrous, he thought, you might be onto something, because right now our conference in perspective has 9 schools. BYU is now in the Big 12, and all the schools in that conference, except for a few, I think, in the WAC, they're all non-football schools and things like that. And again, you're looking at California, Arizona, I think Nevada, Utah, Texas. I think I may even think as well with New Mexico, then schools up in Washington. So like maybe that gains traction. Again, that was just my hypothetical. Like I just threw something that would stick to the wall, though. Maybe the Mountain West and the Pac-12 or Pac-4, Pac-5 merge. I know they probably won't want to do that. But yeah, I think just to wrap up my thoughts, though, I know I've said a lot here, and I'm sorry for rambling on so much, but I just really want to see someone try and change my mind, and even change Missouri's head football coach. And I think, though, guys, eventually there's going to be more coaches and more people that won't say it now, but I think a few months, a year or two, a couple years down the road, they're going to say this was a bad idea. And I think we all would agree with that, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you for that rant.
I think you froze.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm good now. Am I back?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes.
All right. I'm good now. All right. So thank you for that. And we're at that time now to where it's pretty much time to go ahead and wrap up the show. So we're going to go around and go ahead and give our final thoughts here. So Crispy, I'll start with you. What are your final thoughts for the evening?
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, tuning in. All of our great shows we have on Coast to Coast. Tune in for that. And just stick around. We got great shows.
All right, mess around. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, sorry about my background noise earlier. I did realize my Bluetooth was connected. That's what that was. But I love being on the show. It's always fun. Callan's a great addition to the network. So glad he's with us now. And thanks everybody for watching and commenting.
Thoughts?
James, go ahead, bud.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's been a while since we've had this show, and hopefully it'll come back as we're getting into the fall. Lots of things are going to happen, so it's going to be great. Stick to the network and catch us sometime.
All right, Big B.
No, I'm glad to be on. Sorry I was late. Few issues, but got to jump on. Got to work again with Callan. Great addition he's going to be, and just love talking sports. And hopefully my schedule pans itself out here within the next couple of weeks, so I can put 100% effort back into these shows. So again, thanks everybody for joining.
Sounds good. And then Callan, you're fine.
Yeah, thanks again to, Chris and Dave and James and Brandon and Ace for the invite to come on and, again, give my thoughts again. Grateful to be a part of the team here, starting out my second program since I got, finished putting some aloe vera on that podcast itch I've had. But thanks to Christy and Tim and Thomas for commenting. I did say that more details would come about my actual podcast launch. That's going to be next Thursday at around probably 1 o'clock Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern next Thursday, September 7th. Again, my show is going to be a little bit out of the box, more than talking, on Sportsminute here like we talk actual games, but I'll be actually more so talking more about my field of work, which is more of in sports media, broadcasting, announcing, game operations. So it's called Press Road. It'll come your way next Thursday. I'm already trying to start pulling some strings to get some guests to come on the program to share their stories about their careers and stuff like that and whatnot. But that's the angle I'm taking on this podcast route, though, is to, and again, I think it was more like what I said, though, on Kicking It on Monday, is that I'm sure that a lot of you out there, and I think a lot of the guys in the network, though, are, very interested to kind of hear that kind of angle about, the business side of sports, the media side of sports, though, and that's what I'm going to try to do here. Reading off some stories from Front Office Sports and AwfulAnnouncing.com, trying to get some guests put on. But that is right now where we're at, and we're going to start up shop next Thursday afternoon, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Can't wait to see the first episode air here on C2C. So thank you, Callan, for giving everybody a heads up on what's to come next Thursday. All right.
Glad to be
so
here.
with that,
you guys again.
So with that, we want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday for another episode of Sports Minute. Have a good night.
Peace.